So the defendants in the ICC um, case that I brought, I structured it so that I could show how they all connect together within their conflicts of interest and within their plans to launch a simulation of the next pandemic, which I was made the case for why that was basically launching the next pandemic, who was going to benefit from it, who was going to keep control, and everything else. So the first defendant is obviously Antonio Guterres, who's the acting as Secretary General to the United Nations. And the UN Pact for the Future is a protracted abuse of states of emergency, fabricated or real. Failure to act in line with the UN treaty, funding and giving intel to both sides of Palestinian and Israeli war and keeping them going. So these are the things that I wanted to take Antonio Guterres to task for. The UN Pact for the Future basically says that there are all sorts of FIHICs, so that's public health emergencies of international concern. They rate from events in outer space, you know how they started talking about, what did they start talking about? Oh yeah, there's a comet. Yeah, we might have to do something about that. It could hit any time. It would be an absolute disaster. So again, this is an opportunity for them to take control. What other things? Obviously a pandemic. Obviously the migration of mosquitoes, which I did a huge amount of research on. The maximum is 3 miles that they migrate. And of course, but further than that, if of course you are manufacturing them, 500 mosquito eggs per slip that can be imported and exported without regulation and are viable for a year. Now they can travel. God knows they can travel and they can do some damage. So they are creating these public health emergencies of international concern. And then they are, and the pact for the future is that the UN and the WHO and all their bodies, World Economic Forum, can then seize control of member states, override national law, because we are facing a global emergency. That's how these things work. But of course, they're on both sides of everything. Picture the Security Council, the UN Security Council. You know, they're all there making their deals. Russian guy and the British guy and the US guy and the European guys, and they just sit around and they could put a stop to this in a heartbeat. They could put a stop to these wars in a heartbeat, but no. Even as far back as 2010, I learnt about the biological scatter bombs which were, I think, American weapons being tested by Israeli IDF on Palestinians. And so the UN placed all the women and children, 2010, in schools for sanctuary, but then let the IDF know, and they were all bombed with these scatter bombs, which is basically they splinter on landing, and they also reignite on landing. So just think how painful that death was for those little ones and women and children who have been offered sanctuary by the UN. So, and of course now, again, even last week, there was a bombing on a hospital, and half an hour before the bomb went off, all the WHO staff left and went somewhere, for coffee or whatever they went to do. But there was not one WHO staff member there. They'd all been told to leave a half an hour before it went off. So the double agency is very, very sinister. And also obviously keeping the war going because they are not enforcing the International Criminal Court ruling that it's a genocide. Then there's Denis Francis, who's acting as president of the UN General Assembly. The office of the president of the General Assembly, that's in New York. And actually America would like the UN headquarters to be fully in New York, not only in Switzerland. And and he himself has received extraordinary notices signed by the administrations of 12 countries saying we do not accept the Pact for the Future. And within an hour of receiving that wetting signature, very damning, very clear, we do not accept it. Within an hour or two, he was already on the podium going, delighted to say we have 100% agreement on this Pact for the Future. So it's full of lies and human rights violations. So Volker Turk, acting as High Commissioner for Human Rights, he's the third one. Well, I won't go into all the things he's done and overseen and okayed and approved. Anthony Fauci, we all know. He was given a lot of funding early on, and in the early 2000s, and instead of actually researching the emergence of autism as a result of vaccines or in line with vaccines programs, he actually thought, oh, well, let's just put all this into vaccine research, and now we have a whole medical system across the world where you won't find one research student looking into the risks of gene editing or the risks of mRNA. You won't find one. You can look as far as the eye can see. It won't get funding, and that is because of his leadership. So we're calling it now leadership. David Rockefeller. I'm not Rockefeller. Who do you think I am? You know, there's a whole still going strong, orchestrating things. Larry Fink of BlackRock, orchestrating things, massive conflicts of interest. I don't like to call them elite because, in my book, they don't count even as human beings, And then two interesting ones for people who are interested in the green movement and have watched it evolve. Michael Bloomberg and Mark Carney, who was the former governor of the Bank of England. And I think he's now the president of Canada. But anyway, these two guys, very senior in the UN and in banking, and they have been given 57 trillion to this financing of net zero. Now, there's a huge amount of environmentalists who don't want an end to carbon because obviously it's one of those slightly important foundations of life. So you can imagine how sinister that is. 57 trillion for green technologies, any one of which could fundamentally ruin and pollute the gene pool, disrupt any of the basic things we need, like soil fertility, like oxygen production. And there are people who have proven that there is a collapse of the oxygen supply already. So these people really need to go to prison, and that 57 trillion obviously needs to be shared between people who are actually organically farming. We all know Gates has bought up huge amounts of farmland and isn't farming them regeneratively or organically. So that's synthetic, that's GMO. All these things are catastrophic for the human being, the human digestion. So any talk of food security is nonsense. But also the birds and the bees, the pollinators, the animals, just talk about in the wrong hands. So, but all financed through this laundering, through the Glasgow Financing Net Zero Group. Masahiko Motoki is the head of the UPU, Universal Postal Union. And Daniel Kutinsky is also complicit. And as Masahiko's second in command, he started up a whole nother postal territory, which obviously leads to competition between the two, when the whole idea was a fair level playing field for commercial activity and international trade. Bill Gates, and I mean, the only thing I'm interested in about him today is, he founded Microsoft, and within those mosquitoes, within all those aerial deposits, within all those medicines, military medicine, conservation, food, all these things have Microsoft CNN AI capacity. So they are linking everybody who interacts with any of those things with the Internet of Things, with this foreign technology, foreign controlled receiving and transmitting data. So just think about that in terms of Israel and what Israel says about Microsoft. Netanyahu has said the relationship with Microsoft is a match made in heaven. It's all Microsoft technology that has equipped the army to target, find, and kill people with no human oversight, as if they are genuine targets, which is absolutely absurd. Because obviously, if you think of the aid that is being stopped, I mean, now they've actually got people to just roll up to be killed now. But this Microsoft and military connection is very, very sinister indeed. Sir Jeremy Farrar, who I have a pet loathing for, obviously, because he says he's from no natural source, which I would agree with, but he was operated out of Oxford University for many years. He started the Vietnam Tropical Diseases Unit, where he developed mosquitoes and, interestingly, an avian flu vaccine, which he was then director of Wellcome Trust. He's now at the WHO, able to declare a pandemic. Imagine being able to declare a pandemic and make it legally binding for every country in the world to buy and inject your avian flu vaccine, one of your own patented products. I mean, as somebody said yesterday, maybe the WHO own all the patents in some shape or form, or manage all of them. So that, but he is obviously particularly unpleasant because he had a hand in developing these things. I mean, he came up with the idea, I think, of with Gates obviously as well, of creating mosquitoes as a public health response. So we're talking millions, 250 million mosquitoes they wanted to release, male and female. And it used to be they'd only release male because they're non-biting, they would overrule, and they would mate when they mated with native. I'm even getting confused talking about it because it's rubbish. The theory was that they would be released. They would kill the native population by killing the males and by mating with the females, but they're sterile, so they'd all die out, and they put in the extra things to make sure that they wouldn't survive in nature, like deformity of the mouth, so they couldn't bite, inability to rise to maturity. All these genes are floating about, happily transferring to other species now, and affecting their fertility, including us, because of course we all know about mosquitoes that they eat human blood, that they need human blood, 3 human blood meals to reproduce. They produce 300 eggs. They produce in water, and of course that is that water is they're absolutely not checked for in the water supply. They, every single thing about it is actually sick. And because they're so good at evolving mosquitoes, they built these massive production facilities, and the mosquitoes caught on to the fact that the males were infertile, and so they just only produce females now. And they were like, now what we're going to do? Oh, we'll tell the public. We're going to release males and females now because they are safe mosquitoes. They don't transmit disease. That's what we'll tell them. And we'll put in Wolbachia, which is a particularly strong bacteria, because that will override the dengue and the malaria and the other bits and pieces. But which it doesn't. We'll say it will override that. And so it doesn't matter if you're bitten. In fact, we want to increase the population of mosquitoes because they are good mosquitoes, friendly mosquitoes. Even Jeremy Farrar's Oxitex trade name, friendly mosquitoes. So they now release males and females, probably mainly females, all biting, even though all the diseases that all the diseases that have passed through any of the ancestors are passed into the eggs. So it's and we had it on good authority from the World Mosquito Programme scientists in Indonesia that they introduced not just Wolbachia bacteria, but also 11 other pathogens, right? So they're all in there, being passed around, being spread around. And they said, what we've done is we've got them to accept cows' blood now as well. And so, which is obviously a whole nother show, where all the cattle diseases, like for example TB, can be passed around to humans as well, and necessitate a whole nother vaccine rollout for a TB potential emergency. So it's one thing after another. And every single one can be traced back to a declaration by Sir Jeremy Farrar, and quite possibly to a patent that he will benefit from. So Peter Brubeck-Letmathe, I was telling you about him. He's just taken over from, I've obviously blocked his name out of my memory. Anyway, he's taken over as head of the World Economic Forum, and he's the Nestle guy. Now, Nestle have big drilling equipment. You can put Nestle's big drilling equipment next to your average nomadic community or little community in a desert country, or even more desertification country. So they go and they dig down miles into the earth, get to an aquifer, and then put a padlock on it and go away. They're saving that for their own benefit later on. Meanwhile, people are dying of drought by the millions and trillions. 123 million forcibly displaced people. And now we've got Nestle in charge of the World Economic Forum. That guy, Peter Brubeck-Letmathe. I still can't remember his name, but we all know who was before that, the man who called us useless eaters. That was his reference to all people. So the less of us, the better, which isn't a great policy when you have such sway in public health matters. Oh, there he is, Klaus Schwab, ex-World Economic Forum. So there he is. And I actually brought him to task in a case to the Federal Supreme Court in Switzerland, along with Sir Jeremy Farrar, for the pandemic, and actually for something else, monetary arbitrariness, which is basically when you are able to make decisions without any foundation in reality, and with no accountability. It's appalling. It is appalling. And of course, Tedros Ghebreyesus, I don't know how to say it. And as always, I signed it on behalf of all living beings, Francis. Because for goodness sake, we're all together in this. It is literally living things versus corporations, and we mustn't let anything else drive a wedge between us, because all that is orchestrated. And I've heard that is exactly what the British simulation practice pandemic is all about. It's about creating so much bad feeling and resistance to the absurd rules they have now against freedom of speech, that they can, hopefully they want to bring in martial law. So we've got to stick together. It's just people versus all that mad, alleged government. Just don't take it. That's what I'd say. Just don't take it. You can't possibly be expected to accept it. Accept AI, accept genocide, accept hostile infringements on your bodily integrity, and certainly don't accept the cashless society, because that is you being traced left, right, and centre, your every move. I was bad enough even as a vegan all this time, because they have because now, I made lots of interesting products for sale, raw, organic, vegan, bloody delicious, sometimes cooked, but mainly raw organic. So the mineral profile and vitamin and mineral profile is kept intact. But anyway, you might have noticed that my name definitely isn't on the shelves, whereas all these kind of plant goodness, even Bragg's amino acids and Bragg's apple cider vinegar, which is a real go-to for natural health, has been bought by Bill Gates. So it doesn't matter that it says organic. I bet you 50p it's got some of that self-assembling, self-replicating technology that he's so fond of in it. There is a real push to find out what we're interested in, and then use that as an avenue to kill us all stone dead. Sorry to be the bringer of bad news, but please, if you happen to watch this video, make sure on the 7th of September 2025, which is at this moment on Sunday coming, put your phone as far away from you as possible, properly off, because that is when they are launching it, using our own devices. The audacity of the thing. Take care, everybody.